Why credit cards feel like monopoly money. The neuroscience of debt. The invisible trap in your wallet. Picture this scenario. You are standing at the counter of a coffee shop. You order a latte and a pastry. The total comes to $12. If you had to reach into your wallet, pull out a $10 bill and two singles, and physically hand them over to the cashier, you would feel a distinct, albeit small, psychological pinch. You are watching your resources leave your possession. You are calculating how much cash you have left for the rest of the day. Now, picture the alternative. You tap your phone or flash a plastic card. Beep. The transaction is approved. You grab your coffee and walk away. You didn't count money. You didn't see anything leave your hand. You didn't feel a thing. This difference, the difference between a pinch and a numbness, is not just a matter of convenience. It is a biological glitch that the modern financial industry has mastered to perfection. It is the primary reason why American household debt hit a record $17.5 trillion in 2024. We are not just suffering from a lack of discipline. We are victims of a neurological trick known as the elimination of the pain of paying. In this deep dive, we will explore the neuroscience behind why credit cards feel like monopoly money, how Silicon Valley is engineering the pain out of spending, and why your brain is biologically incapable of processing digital debt until it is too late. Part 1. The Insula, your brain's price tag. To understand why we overspend, we have to look inside the human skull. For decades, economists believed humans were rational actors, that we calculated the utility of a product against its price and made a logical decision. But neuroscientists have found that this is simply not true. In a landmark study conducted by researchers from Carnegie Mellon, Stanford, and MIT, participants were placed inside an fMRI, functional magnetic resonance imaging scanner. They were shown products like Godiva chocolates and then their prices. When the participants saw a product they liked, the Nucleus Accumbens, the brain's reward center, lit up. This is the dopamine rush of, I want that. But here's the twist. When the price was shown, a different part of the brain activated the insula. The insula is a fascinating region. It is not a calculation center. It is the part of the brain associated with pain, disgust, and social exclusion. It lights up when you smell rotten food, when you see a terrifying image, or when you pinch your skin. This means that to the human brain, spending money is literal pain. It is an aversive stimulus. When you hand over cash, the insula fires. It creates a negative emotional response that acts as a natural brake on your spending. It asks, is this coffee really worth this pain? However, this evolutionary brake was designed for physical resources, food, tools, and tangible currency. It was not designed for plastic. Part 2. The anesthetic effect of plastic. When you use a credit card, something dangerous happens in the brain. The insula stays quiet. Because credit cards and digital wallets, like Apple Pay, are abstract, the brain does not register the transaction as a loss of resources. You are not giving anything away. You are simply swiping a piece of plastic that you get to keep. The card goes back in your pocket. The phone goes back in your bag. This phenomenon is what behavioral economists call the monopoly money effect. In the board game Monopoly, you happily spend $500 on a hotel because the money isn't real. It has no survival value. Credit cards trick the brain into treating real money with the same casual indifference. The Dun & Bradstreet study. This isn't just theory. In a famous experiment involving an auction for tickets to a sporting event, researchers found that people bidding with credit cards were willing to pay twice as much, on average $175 versus $100, as those bidding bad with cash. When the pain of paying is removed, we don't just buy more things. We are willing to pay higher prices for the same things. We become less price sensitive. We stop looking for discounts. We upgrade to the venti instead of the tall because the difference of $0.80 feels like zero when it is digital. Part 3. The decoupling mechanism. The magic of the credit card lies in a concept called decoupling. In a cash transaction, the joy of buying an item and the pain of paying for it happen simultaneously. They are coupled. The pain dilutes the pleasure, keeping you grounded. Credit cards decouple these two events. The purchase now. You get the product immediately. The reward center, Nucleus Accumbens, is flooded with dopamine. You feel great. The payment. The bill doesn't arrive for 30 days. By the time you actually pay the bill, the consumption experience is over. You have already worn the shoes, eaten the dinner, or watched the TV. The payment feels like an annoying administrative task rather than a purchase. Even worse, credit card bills aggregate everything into one lump sum. When you pay a $2,000 bill at the end of the month, you don't feel the specific pain of that $12 coffee or that $50 shirt. The specific pain is erased, replaced by a vague sense of monthly expenses. This separation allows us to live in a perpetual state of consume now, worry later. Part 4. The evolution of frictionless spending. If credit cards were the first step in numbing the pain of paying, modern technology is the overdose. Tech companies and banks are obsessed with one word: friction. Friction is anything that slows down a transaction. Counting change, signing a receipt, entering a PIN, or even pulling a card out of a wallet. In the eyes of a merchant, friction is the enemy because friction gives the consumer time to think, and thinking leads to the insula activating. The Uber effect. Consider the psychology of an Uber ride compared to a traditional taxi. In a taxi, you watch the meter tick up, pain, anxiety. At the end, you physically hand over cash or run a card. In an Uber, the transaction is invisible. You get in, you get out. You never discuss money. You never see a meter. The payment happens in the background, completely divorced from the experience. It feels free. This is why we take Ubers more frequently and travel further distances than we ever did with taxis. The one-click world, Amazon's buy now with one click, was a revolution not in logistics, but in psychology. By removing the shopping cart review page, the one moment where you might reconsider your total, Amazon removed the last line of defense your Insula had. Now, with Apple Pay and contactless payments, the physical act of spending has been reduced to a wave of the hand. We are moving toward a cashless society, which sounds futuristic and efficient. But for the human brain, it is a disaster. It creates a world where spending limits feel theoretical and resources feel infinite. Part 5. The gamification of debt, points, and rewards. To add insult to injury, the financial industry didn't just remove the pain, they replaced it with pleasure. Enter the world of points, miles, and cash back. Historically, spending money was a depleting activity. Now, credit card companies have successfully reframed spending as an earning activity. I need to spend $3,000 in the first 3 months to get the sign-up bonus. I'm getting 2% cash back on this purchase. This is pure behavioral conditioning. It hacks the brain's reward system. Instead of the insula firing a warning shot, don't spend this. The Nucleus Accumbens fires a cheer. Spend this and get a free flight to Hawaii. We convince ourselves we are gaming the system. We tell ourselves we are being smart with our money, but the math rarely works in our favor. Studies show that consumers who chase rewards spend significantly more than the value of the rewards they earn. If you spend 20% more to earn 2% back, the bank is winning, not you. Part 6. The social cost, tipping, and generosity. The pain of paying doesn't just affect what we buy for ourselves, it affects how we treat others. The rise of digital payment tablets, the iPad point of sale, has fundamentally changed tipping culture in America. When you pay for a coffee and the iPad swivels around, offering you 3 options, 20%, 25%, 30%, you are far more likely to tap the higher number than if you had to reach into a tip jar and pull out dollar bills. Why? Because of social pain versus financial pain. With cash, the financial pain is high. You see the money leaving, so you might tip modestly. With the iPad, the financial pain is 0. It's just a digital number. However, the social pain of looking cheap in front of the barista is very high. Since the brain doesn't register the digital money as real loss, it prioritizes avoiding social awkwardness. We overtip not out of generosity, but because the cost of being generous feels non-existent in the moment. Part 7. The future. Buy now, pay later. The final evolution of this psychological trap is the buy now, pay later explosion services, like Affirm, Klarna, Afterpay. BNPL services are the ultimate weapon against the insula. They take a price that might trigger pain, say $200 for a pair of sneakers, and break it down into 4 payments of $50. $200 triggers the insula. That's too expensive. $50 flies under the radar. That's the price of a lunch. By visually reducing the price, these services bypass the brain's price sensitivity threshold. They not only decouple the payment, they fragment it, making the total cost cognitively impossible to track. You aren't spending $200. You are entering a micro-contract that your future self has to worry about. Conclusion. reclaiming your brain. So, are we doomed? Is the modern consumer destined to drown in a sea of painless debt? Not necessarily. Understanding the mechanism is the first step to breaking the spell. The goal isn't to abandon technology and go back to carrying sacks of gold coins. The goal is to reintroduce friction into your financial life. If you find yourself overspending, you need to artificially stimulate the insula. You need to make paying painful again. 3 psychological hacks to recouple your money. The cash diet. For discretionary spending, groceries, dining out, entertainment, switch to cash for 30 days. Physically withdraw the money. Feel the thickness of the wallet decrease as the week goes on. You will be shocked at how many purchases you suddenly decide you don't really need. The notification shock. Turn on instant transaction alerts on your phone for every single purchase. When you tap your card, your phone should vibrate immediately with the amount. This attempts to artificially couple the purchase with the payment. It forces you to look at the number now, not in 30 days. The hours worked translation. Before buying something, do not look at the price in dollars. Convert it into hours of work. If you make $20 an hour and a pair of headphones costs $200, ask yourself, is this plastic gadget worth 10 hours of sitting in that office? This reframing triggers a different part of the brain, the evaluation of effort, which can mimic the protective effects of the insula. The bottom line, the banks, the tech giants, and the retailers have hired the world's best PhDs in neuroscience to design a system that makes parting with your money feel like nothing. They want you to feel like you are playing with monopoly money. But the debt is real, the interest rates are real, and the stress that comes after the bill arrives is very real. The only way to win the game is to realize that the pain of paying isn't a bad thing. That pain is your brain's way of protecting you. It's time to start feeling it again.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any videos. See you soon.